Welcome back to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and this is another program in the series we're doing leading up to this coming weekend, January 8th to the 11th, 8th to the 10th, actually, where we're going to have a series of people who've had walk-in experiences. That's why this poster is up here. That was the walk-in poster, and today's guest is Rob Gauthier. And I'm joined by my co-host, Justin Lands, and me and Justin and I have been doing a channel panel. We did one in December. We're going to do another one in February. And I invited Justin on because he knows Rob's work better than I do, because, I'm just everybody all over the place, just, conglomerating people and their ideas. And I love to present channels because they are the new voice and the old voice of a spiritual essence that goes beyond tradition. That is why I think channeling is so important. In most spirituality, it's tied to old religious beliefs. And I think when I hear really juicy channels, it's like, wow, tell me more. I didn't know that. So I'm really happy to have Rob here, who's going to be in the walk-in conference. And if you want tickets for that, go to portaltoascension.org. My good friend Neil Gar is promoting and producing that along with Sheila Seppi. But we're going to talk to Rob today. And Justin, why don't you introduce Rob, because you've been following his work for a while and I'm new to it. So go ahead.
No, I mean, probably saw some of Rob's videos on YouTube the first time about 4 years ago, and he channels two beings. One is that I know he does others, but the main ones I think are Ardif and Treb. And from now, they're both. Well, maybe I'm wrong about this. Are they reptilian beings? Am I correct, Rob?
Yeah, Treb is a reptilian human hybrid. He's not from the reptilians from the Earth or Alpha Draconian, but an animal and a mixture with humanoid. And Aradif is completely different. He's just a humanoid type being, but calling him humanoid's rough because he looks humanish, but also he has, blue skin and purple eyes and purple hair and different toes and hand maneuvering, very short. So he couldn't pass for a human if he walked into the room, but he's humanoid. So that's really the only classification that I can give to him.
Is he from the Sirius star system?
Aradif is Denebian. They call him the ancient Pleiadian because their race moved from the Pleiades to the star that they're now at, which is Deneb. And that's actually where his name came from. Interacting with humans in early history, he was dealing with the area that's now the Middle East. And back then they called the star that he came from Aradif, or Aradif, which is how it's pronounced there, which is Arabic for dry something. And I can't remember, but that's the star, how they picked it out of the sky. So if you go to the Cygnus constellation, Alpha Cygnus is Deneb, and that's where Ardif comes from.
Okay. Well, I'm always interested in how people got in touch with channeling, because it, like I said before, it's an ancient phenomena, but it's also something kind of new, something that the collective hasn't quite understood. So how did you find out about channeling, and how did you discover you were actually one of them?
Well, I didn't know anything about channeling when I first met Treb. I knew about mediumship and psychic energy. But if you go back, leading up to that, I had spent about 9 or 10 years on a heavy drug addiction. It started with pain medicine, car accident, and it just went out of control. After finally quitting and starting to heal myself, that spiritual part of myself came back. I grew up as a Christian, went through the churches, so I always had a connection to God of some sort. But I also left Christianity when I was young because there was too many holes that I couldn't figure out. No one had good answers, so I walked away. But I always felt that there was something bigger and greater than us. So after my drug addiction, on my way to healing, my spiritual parts of myself and my emotional parts were healing. And I started going on a journey just looking into things. One group claimed that they could prove that there was an existence after life. I always studied the phenomenon of ghosts and UFOs as a kid. It excited me. So on my way back to that, there's a group of people at a church called a spiritualism church or spiritualist church. And I was like, you know what? These guys say that they can do it. Let's test the waters. Let's see what they got. I went there. The guy who never met me, this is before I was on social media, checked everything, all the boxes off that I needed to know that he was legit and that he was good at what he was doing. He told me about my son, about relatives that I didn't even know about. I had to ask my dad. So right there, I knew it was legit, and I stuck around. And one day, the guy who I got to know there said, stick around after, we're doing meditations. And that's how it started. It started with meditations. I ended up leaving the church because it was a church and there was issues that involved with all organized religion, dogma, inner fighting, lack of continuity when it came to the messages. So I left and kind of went on to my own journey. I bumped into a metaphysical energy that was kind of connected to higher consciousness when I bumped into the Hemisync from the Gateway Experience. Hemisync, it's a part of the Robert Moreau Institute.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, that's what really set me up, because I was looking for a way to take my meditation higher from what I'd learned at the church. I started the Gateway Experience Hemisync program, and that's what really put me over the moon in meditation. And I did that for months and months and months and learned all the 7 waves and all the steps. And one night I was disconnected really badly. I was having emotional problems, just having a tough time. Like I said, I'd been on drugs for 10 years. I was still trying to get back into life. And at that point, I did a deep meditation, one of the deepest that I'd been into. And that's where I met Treb. And Treb was my original first guide. And I met him in an astral projected state. Like
when you said you met him, what actually, did you see him or feel him or what? How did you meet him?
Yeah, in the meditation, I went to a very deep trance-like state. I didn't know it was a trance state, but it was deeper than I'd ever gone. And when I'm in the meditation, I appear in this room and in comes this entity, and you could see him. He's huge. He was pretty scary. So there was a fear that rushed into me really quickly. And instantly I felt this love. And this love was such a strong sense of love. Like people who have children understand parental love. It's the strongest thing that you can have. You love your children more than you love your spouse and your parents and your siblings and anyone else. It made that feel like that was a very low level of love. Wow. So it was this intense sense of love. And instantly, I'm asking the questions that everyone would if they had this experience they never had, just jump in front of them. What am I doing here? Who are you? What is going on here? Wow. It was a short meeting. He just basically said, I'm connected to you. Me and you are both connected. This experience of life is not really what you understand it is, what you think it is. And there's lots of different layers of this. And you've lived in one layer your whole life, and now you're finding the different layers. So I thought my brain got broken with the meditations. I thought that something badly happened to my psychology or something. And I ended up waiting. Now, at this time, I was meditating like I used drugs. I did it as frequently as possible and as much as I could. So I was changing addiction from drug to meditation. And when I did, I was meditating, 3 times a day for an hour and a half, sometimes up to 6 or 7 hours.
I just want to ask you one thing.
Sure.
So people do drugs, I think, because they want to reach those other realms, escape from this world. And that's why we were doing meditation, probably. But there is a difference. And talk about like the organic nature of the meditation, because I think it's important for people to know the difference, because you've dived so deep into both. So what do you think?
Well, drugs for me was an escape from my emotional issues. My son had a lot of problems medically. He has CP. So there was a lot of emotional trauma there, knowing that my son would be handicapped for the rest of his life and not be able to have a normal life, what I thought was normal. So it was painful for me, and that helped me not focus on that. It helped me not feel that. And also, I mostly did opiate pain medicines or stimulants like cocaine. But I did do a few hallucinogenics, like a few times I took mushrooms. and some salvia durinium. And those experiences did take me in a higher dimensional setting, but my mindset wasn't there. For me, it was just to get high with. So that experience helped me find more of my inner self. My thought processes came easier, went deeper. But afterwards, this meditation took levels that I could get to with mushrooms and made them insignificant and low, because my intent going into meditation was to go into higher places than I've ever been before.
Wow.
And doing it internally versus externally, which is what you do when you're using drugs, you're projecting an external version of that internal reality. Then, you know, you're kind of capped off or limited if the intent also isn't there. I mean,
Right.
I think they're a good tool, but they're just not the same. I can get in higher levels with meditation than I can with any drug.
Much higher, right? You go way
Right.
beyond. But does the drugs actually ever do help? I mean, get over the pain and the anguish. Does it help? Or I'm just curious because
Yeah, it makes you forget, but it actually makes those emotional traumas, the mental traumas, much worse. You know, the hallucinogenics were different. I had only taken them a handful of times. Each time I did, I didn't use drugs for 3 or 4 days afterwards, which was good. But the other types of drugs, the stimulants and the opiates, those just make you forget about it. It makes it compound too, because now you've got a lot of other stuff to be depressed about. You're chasing drugs all day. You're not spending time with your family. Your health is declining. Your mental state is, you know, significantly disconnected from where it was. So it doesn't really help. It just hides.
So what was it about meditation that then makes you able to deal with the situations better if you're still escaping? Something has to shift, right? So what
Right.
was it?
That's what it was. My meditation at first was just feeling good, because in meditation, I felt good. And doing meditation at first, when I first started doing it, it was the same escapism. It was the interaction with just trying to get out of the world. What clicked is after I met Treb and I started working with Treb, he shared with me a lot of the things about the internal versus external. And like, he took my son as an example very early on and said, you know, this is a soul entering a body, desiring to be with the parents he's with, desiring to come in the way that he is come in, so that he can have an experience, and shared with me past lives where he had been, you know, totally physical as a warrior, a soldier, and been totally mental as an inventor and a genius. And this life, he wanted to experience pure emotions without the physicality, without the mental, which is what the handicap was. So it made me learn to respect that all the traumas that I thought were in my life were actually either there because the person who was going through it needed that experience, or because I needed it.
Right.
Once
Now,
I understood that, that made all the difference.
and go back to that moment where you thought, okay, this being appears. You thought your brain was broken or something. What was that moment of like saying, oh, maybe there's something real here? What was that? When did that happen? Yeah.
Well, first I went to, and I only mentioned this a couple times before, but after that happened, I went to an emergency room doctor and was like, I think I broke my brain. And luckily I got a good doctor who was like, you know, you're messing with these things that can affect your brain patterns. You're probably just tapping into the same level that you are at sleep. You know, dreams are crazy. This is crazy. You know, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. You know, if you have issues like that without meditating, then you need to go see somebody and get some help. So I said, okay,
That's good.
2 or 3 days without meditation is what drew me back in. Plus, you know, this experience, what the hell is going on here? So I had to figure that part out. After several interactions with him, he asked me to talk to one of my friends who I'd been talking to all the time, best friends since I was 4 years old. And he said, you know, you don't have to share your experience if you don't want to, just talk to him. He led me into this conversation with my friend, and my friend showed me a UFO video. And this UFO video actually talked about channeling, and it talked about 2 different channelings. One of them was the Law of One, which they talked about quite a bit. And then just in brief passing, they said this channeling, in our opinion, is the second best, only to Seth material with Jane Roberts. So I listened. for whatever reason, I wasn't attracted to that idea of the law of one up front. So I listened to that just quick sentence that they said. And as soon as I opened up the Seth material, Seth Speaks, everything that me and Trev had talked about in the last few times of interacting with one another, this was being talked about in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. Yeah. And I had never heard anything like it ever anywhere before I met Trev. And to hear that reflected back from a person, and then to go back and follow and start looking at other channeler, because then I had a name to put to it. Then I knew it was channeling. Right. And I started looking at other channelers, and all these people for hundreds of years to the last, 30 years before that, were all saying similar things about self-creation, about reality, about souls entering bodies, just everything Trev said. That's when I knew there was something there.
Right. And so, Justin, jump in if you want. So there was a moment though, where you're going from externally experiencing this being to like channeling. How does that like happen? How does that idea come on? Because it's kind of like, I don't know if I would want that to happen. How did that happen?
Well, first, me and Trev never did a channeling for the first 2 years I knew him. I just got out of a place in my life where you trust no one. You trust somebody, you could end up getting killed or go to jail or whatever the case is. So it took me a while to really see if my experience was valid, and to see if this being that just magically appears in my reality is being honest and truthful. Mm-hmm. After a few months, I really felt comfortable with him. But he taught me just so much about reality. All the questions I had to ask for him, he had answers for. And when I looked at those answers through other sources, everything looked good. So finally, I come to a place where—
would he speak to you telepathically? Sorry to interrupt, but telepathically he would speak. And what did he look like? I'm just curious what you saw as a being.
Yeah, it was always an astral state. So I was always in a deep meditation when it happened, because I learned how to get there that one time by doing a different technique, by adjusting the hemisync technique. Right. So I knew how to get there. Every time I did, I met with him. Every time we talked, he shared his physical appearance. There's an artist in our community named Vashnarada, and she's done the most accurate physical portrayal of him. I gave her all the details when she did it. There was slight tweaks in it that she did, so it's perfect. I mean, if you want to know what Trev looks like, this is a great representation. But he's about 7.5 foot tall. He's a reptilian being. So like any reptilian beings, there's a reptilian type of skin. His skin's like a blue-green color. His eyes are purple, and he has dots that are red on his skin. And like I said, he's very tall, very wide, very muscular and tone-looking. Also
very loving, you said.
Extremely loving. Yeah, the most loving being. I mean, just being around him still to this day, when I'm around him, all I feel is that love that makes me feel like my human version of love is insignificant, because it's just such a big energy. Yeah, and Ardif has that too, just in a different form.
Ardif is the other person you channel being, and is that a reptilian too?
No, he's the humanoid being from Deneb, the ancient Pleiadian. He is someone I don't experience as viscerally and as directly as I do Trev, but he's connected to Trev like Trev is connected to me. So he always talked about having his own guide, someone who was in a higher dimension than he was, that he connected to. And eventually I came to know him. Well, I first came to know him as Deneb Cygnus, which was the constellation star name where he came from. But then when I connected with him directly, he represented himself as Ardif, which again was the name for the star from the ancient humans when they interacted back then. So after I connected with him, I didn't connect directly. I always connected to Trev, and then Trev connected to him. So I was channeling Trev when Trev was channeling Ardif, if that makes sense. But it took me.
That's pretty amazing. You were channeling. Wait, let me see if I do get that. Wait, you were channeling Trev, and Trev was so Trev was an in between you and artists, right? And so
yeah.
I get it.
That happens actually quite often with channelers. They have a go-to energy or presence, and they can, through that, like Bashar, within our Inca, there's Willa and others that come, like Bashar enters, and then he transmits the transmission of this other energy. And I think it's because you're more comfortable with Treb as the first, and says, oh, here's another being who you can introduce yourself. Yeah.
It's like a gateway, a sort of a gatekeeper, they may call it. So then how did you start to actually channel this reptilian, letting this being into your body?
Yeah, see, that's the part that was weird. So I go 2 years and I'm interacting with him. My life after meeting him changed as much as it changed from my ending of drugs to the beginning of my spiritual experience, which was a huge shift. It changed that much more with meeting Treb to the 2 years after. And I'm like, people need to know this information. People need to understand, have access to, or be able to connect with that information. And at this point, I trust myself to know what he was sharing. But when I started sharing it with people, they would ask me a question. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So I seen it happen because I was directed to other channeling. And I asked Treb, I said, do you think I could channel you? And he's like, yeah, of course, it's easy. So yeah, easy. So I worked with him for months. He taught me techniques. I learned techniques from written books of people who are channeling. I watched videos on YouTube. I did as much as I could. And there wasn't a lot back then. This was like 2009. There wasn't a whole bunch. Eventually we found a way to connect and he came through it. And I tried, and it was like watching the videos disturbing, very, very disturbing to me when I first watch it. Because here's my body moving and talking with me having no memory of it.
You're
no
not
control.
a conscious channel at all. You just completely get out of the way and you don't know what's said until you see the video. That's deep. Those are the kind of channels like Ramtha and Bashar and Pulsar. Like these are the kind
Alan,
that
I talked to Daniel Scranton a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a Rob. I don't know if you would concur, but Daniel, he channels the Arcturians, and they're more non-physical. And he was thinking that people go into the full trance state, or like you are kind of not there. It's more because it's a physical being that you're. And he was wondering if maybe it's because of some of the technique they're using, or they're using some sort of instrument to, whereas a non-physical would not. I don't know if you've heard about this idea maybe, or if you thought about that.
No, from my understanding was always that in connecting, there's the possibility, like I can consciously channel if I want. If I sit down and focus in, I can hear Treb and Ardif easily. I don't, because my own personality doesn't let it come through without me interrupting. And I think before I started this life, I'm like, hey, there's a possibility I might channel. I have the equipment for it, the natural inclination. I've got the guides. So maybe I will. And if I do, I need to stay the hell out of my own way. So for me, that was kind of the reason I think that that's how it worked for me. But I also think there's a lot of validity to the different kinds of energies and how they come through. You see people who are conscious channelers who bring in lots of different entities. And it's very, very clear how the different entities and energies affect the different people who are channeling them. I mean, Daniel Scranton could be one of those possibilities. I'm not sure how consciously he channels. He's a good friend of mine. I should know this, but
yeah, he's conscious. He says he's pretty. It's pretty clear, and yeah, I thought that was interesting because I know also like Daryenko completely is not there when he pops in. He's like he has no idea what's really happened in the conversation.
That's like Jay-Z Knight. Actually, Edgar Casey didn't have any idea of what he was saying. I mean, do you feel like channeling today, or you want to just, or does it take a lot to do that, or you want to just talk about what I'm curious of the information Treb delivers. So it's
yeah. I channeling requires me to shut down for about 10 minutes so I can get my energy there. Plus today's my birthday. We got plans a little later, so
that's okay.
Yeah, it takes me a while to recover.
That's
Thank you.
okay.
We'll
see it. We'll see it on the walk-in conference, right? You're going to channel there?
Yes, I'm going to. And you can go to my YouTube channel. I make sure to share free information as much as I can. I've got hundreds of videos that are public there with me channeling Treb and Ardif and hundreds of other beings. So yeah, one thing I'll say too about the conscious versus trance channeling. The trance channeling I've noticed is an older paradigm also. I think people who were born before a certain time frame often channel in trance more than that. I think the kids who are coming out these days channeling, the teenagers, 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, they're naturally going to conscious channeling because they were born in a time of less resistance energetically. I think that I'm kind of a dinosaur in that way, even though I'm only 41. I started channeling back in a very dense time, 2008-ish or 2009-ish. So I think there's a big difference in the reason why people are able to consciously channel so much better now than they were.
Well, tell me, what is your website so people can hear some of your channelings?
Yeah, if you want to go to the channeling, we've got etwhisper.com. We've got the ET Whisper Rob Gauthier on YouTube, and the channelpanel.com is our other one too. So that's where we do with multiple channels.
And I think, Justin, I think Rob would be great for the Channel Panel Forum that you're putting together.
Definitely.
So
yeah, I mean, especially the one ET's in March that we want to do
in March,
the first Saturday, if you're available.
Great.
Maybe.
But tell me,
I'll check my calendar. I'd love to do that if I can.
Awesome.
What kind of information do you bring through those both? And like, what do they deal with? What's the overall theme?
The overall theme on all the channeling is creation, self-creation, working with your higher consciousness to break through the barriers that you have as human lives. And RDF deals with very technical aspects of consciousness. He sits there and breaks down the hows, the whys, the whats, and the wheres, universal consciousness, collective consciousness is planetary. He goes through and completely breaks it down into very in-depth levels of how consciousness works, how you interact with it, why it works. Treb deals more with the energy in human experience, and he has access to that higher knowledge of, galactic going-ons, universal. But he deals more with emotional and mental energy, not just because he's one density or dimension lower than Ardif, but also because the version of human that is in him is from the Nihal collective. And the Nihal is a probable future human reality. So in a way, Treb is actually very related to humans. He has, 25 to 50% of partial human DNA inside of his body anyway.
Is he still physical though? Is he still a physical being? Oh, he is.
Yeah, Ardif and Treb both are, but they're higher dimensional beings. So if you go from our density, which is, we're shifting between third and fourth density now, fifth density is where Treb's at. And then Ardif's right at the last layer of sixth density, right before you leave physical reality and go back into the oversoul. So Ardif's race is at the very end. That's another reason why he has such great flow of energy and a deep understanding of the mechanics of the universe, because that level of our soul evolution is mastery, complete mastery. So
when you go in, we'll see it on the walk-in conference, but so you clear your mind. How do you just describe what you do without doing it? I mean, I'm just curious.
Sure. When I start, there's a visualization that I use, and basically I'm grounding myself real deep to the earth energy. As I'm breathing in and out, I always listen to music. That's why I never warm up in front of everybody when I neutralize, because I sing too, and when I sing, it's horrible. So I'm sitting there just tuning into that energy, visualizing my whole energy and the chakras in my body going into the earth, and then pulling earth energy into me so I'm as neutral as I can be. And then after that, I start the process, which has been on camera. You could see it on most of the channelings that I do live. And that's the very deep oming. And the reason I do that is as I'm bringing all the chakra energy, I'm oming to vibrate the chakras. And I lift the energy from the bottom of the root all the way to the throat and then into the third eye. And once I sit there in the third eye vibration long enough where I feel my whole body vibrating, then I let it through the crown, which is release my consciousness, enter Trevor Ardif's consciousness. And that usually, the oming part takes about 3 minutes, and then the 10 minutes of neutralizing time is the visualization process.
But then do you have any conscious recall of where you go as your consciousness?
Yeah. When you're talking to Treb, I'm also talking to Treb, just like I experienced them the first time and like I've experienced them now for 12 years. It's an astral projected state interaction. So like I'll sit with him on his planet. If he's in a ship, I'll be sitting there. If he's on another planet, I'm sitting there. So me and him are just interacting face to face while you're talking to him. Treb's beautiful that way. He can have 10 entities around the galaxy channeling him at once and put part of his consciousness in all of it. Ardif has more consciousness than him, but Ardif, with his specific personality and beliefs, he likes to focus it all at one time at one point. So he's very very present fully in that moment where Treb likes to do lots of stuff at once. Yeah,
that's a very interesting, because I know when you're channeling, they're very different styles. For one thing, I thought Treb was female, because it's like a very feminine, motherly kind of energy coming through you when you're doing that. I see it, the smile. Ardif is like a professor. He's sitting up there. He's serious. Love is still there, but I know what you mean. I can see how Treb has that, surrounds you with that feeling of love, and the other one's a bit more airy, kind of intellectual love. And because I was really certain that Ardif was like a perfect representation of the masculine representation of that energy, and then the feminine, it would be Treb. But they're both female.
Compared to human energy, Treb's actually very feminine energy. But what's funny when you look at the art, because Vash has done both Ardif and Treb beautifully represented, and when you look at them, most people think Ardif's a female, the way he looks and appears, and everyone, you see Treb, it's a big male masculine figure. So it's very fun. And then when I experience both of them, I experience Treb as a very chill, relaxed, but the way he comes through my body is just so funny and stupid.
It is. It's energy. I just see like you moving out of the chair. And Ardif is so cool, and you're just like cross the legs, and you're just like talking in front of a classroom, and then like the Treb is getting into it, and then you feel like the Treb wants to kiss the person. It's such a embracing kind of. It's very interesting.
Do you have any pictures of them handy? I mean, if you don't have to look for them, I mean, just curious if you have anything. I'm just very curious about what you're. I mean, it doesn't matter what they look like, but I like to just in case they show up in my reality, I want to know who I'm talking to.
Yeah, Vashta.com, the artist who did them. I'm gonna look there for them real quick because that's probably easier than digging. But yeah, she's got the most amazing art. Daniel Fisher is another person who did some art of both of them, and that was really great too. So yeah, I will find that if I can.
Okay, but also while you're looking, I just want to know, like, so you're in this trance, and what you're sitting on his planet, that with him, that's like being an anthropologist to other dimensions. Can you describe what those planets are like? I mean, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I usually don't talk a ton about it with people. I talk about Treb's planet. No, it's fine. I mean, I can talk about it. I'm just curious. It never comes up often, right? Treb's planet is beautiful. He sits on a red dwarf dual system, so it's always light out, at least lighter than our night times will, but he's got a planet that's kind of tidally locked, so the front of it's always facing the star, the back's not facing. There's about a 20-mile band around the whole planet that has a storm system, which metaphysically is a beautifully telling thing, that their race had a very rough start. They had been attacked by other reptilian race before, so there are older members of the society who still remember the trauma of the old experience and still believe that they should be protected from that and things like that. And the younger generations, like, we're trusting our creation. We don't need to protect ourselves. So it shows up as the variance in the weather patterns. And then it's a very fascinating story.
But they were seeded by reptilians. I think all the reptilians did a kind of panspermia, including this planet, to seed reptilian genetics throughout the galaxy.
I never heard that word before. Panspermia.
Panspermia.
Panspermia. Wow.
Panspermia. It's actually the word used by scientists, like mainstream scientists, talk about how the seed of life has been spread consciously from planet to planet. So, yeah.
Yes, and with Treb's race specifically, there was an animal who looks a lot like the difference between a Komodo dragon here on Earth plus one of the ones that we had before the Permian era, a reptilian. If you took those two and mixed it together, it was almost a perfect representation of the second density being that Treb's race had reptilian genetics taken from. And the Nihal took that energy and connected, and actually did so for a very telling reason too. If the Nihal look at their past, that's where we're at now. That's the human past. So they knew about the fear and the hatred towards reptilian beings, and wanted to connect with that DNA and show that it's not in the DNA. It's in the conscious evolution of the soul. Treb's race grew up to be extremely loving, and one of the very few type 1 entities out of the reptilian consciousness that comes. There's probably only 15% benevolency across reptilian races in our galaxy. And out of that 15, only about 10% are type 1, while the other 90% of the 15% end up being type 2, highly benevolent to midway benevolent in the spectrum of their ecology and consciousness. So Treb is a minority in the reptilian energy, but still shows and proves that reptilian consciousness can be amazingly loving and nurturing and connected.
Right. And the soul itself is transcending our human bodies, our Draco bodies, our, Nordic, whatever. The soul is of the higher essence. But I do think the time the dinosaurs ruled the earth, as they say, there was actually reptilian consciousness that was sentient, that was part of that. And there was another race that came down and just wiped out the reptilian level of sentience here to be replaced by the humanoid, and maybe in not such a nice way, but it was also incorporated into our body. The reptilian brain and all that has been, we as humans have been a fusion of many different races. So
yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that Treb said about the reptilians, this is something I on my own have come up with and have bounced it off Treb before too, which seems to have some validity. The consciousness of the dinosaurs transferred were Earth reptilians, the ones who didn't die, the ones who didn't get destroyed during that, had transference of their energy into the Earth reptilian, higher dimensional Earth reptilian beings that kind of went underground and stuff. So those people who are always talking about the negative bad Earth reptilians, those were just the dinoids that had left over, who had their own genetics connected with by Alpha Draconian, which are the ones who, like you said, the panspermia kind of went around the galaxy creating reptilian imagery in second density animals, so that once they evolved to third density would be bipedal reptilian consciousness. So
wow, that's fascinating. If you can't find those pictures, don't worry about it. We'll see. I mean,
I did find one, but it's on a poster for our webinar. So it's very hard to see.
We can put that up. Why don't you put that? We'll promote your webinar actually as well.
Oh, it's already a past due one. I'm gonna save the image and blow it up, and then I'll screen share it.
I'm gonna make you a co-host to share the screen there. And so when you, Justin, when you've experienced Rob channeling, what was your feeling that came to you vibrationally, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. Treb is definitely an all-embracing kind of loving being. I find it very, how Rob translates that with his body and his movement and smiling and just in the expressions, it's pure. And I was very impressed with Rob being able to because he translated the Treb and then Ardif, and you see totally two different beings in their expression coming through his body. It's like, night and day. I mean, still higher intelligence and ideas, but you see just the, just how
there they
how
are. That's Treb and Ardif. Ardif definitely does look feminine.
Yes.
Is that and is this how you actually see them, Rob, in your consciousness?
Yeah, very physically. I don't interact on a face-to-face level with Ardif too much. I feel him more consciously and connected. I've seen visions of him and seen movements of him, but he's at a higher dimensional level. I think that's my limitation with him, is that I can only get so high, and Trev has to come down to meet me. But Ardif's so high, I'm just not evolved there as much as I could be.
Well, you will be at some point. Is this your wife you channel with? Is that your, who's that?
Yes, that's my beautiful partner and wife, Kalina Angel. She actually channels herself. She actually does a lot of good stuff. She doesn't share a lot publicly, but the last channel panel we did in 2017 in Burbank, where we had Daryl Anka and Lee Harris and a bunch of other great channelers, she was the first presenter. So some people who have seen that, that was her channeling too. So.
Well, maybe if we do this thing with Justin, maybe she could come on for a little bit if she wants to do some channeling. I mean, I'd like to, I'm always interested in what new voices have to say.
Give me 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. I'm just got to step out for 1 second.
No, okay, take your time. I'm just going to talk to Justin here.
Yeah, I have to say one thing really cool about what I learned from Treb. Treb was talking about their planet was in a lot of war, and there was a lot of there was another like draconian race that was attacking all the time. And I think the Nihal taught Treb, or Treb, I don't know, not directly Treb, but their people, how to deal with these attacks. And the attacks were not to protect themselves. It wasn't about fighting. It was about meditation. It was about loving acceptance. And it was a big leap of faith, I think, for these people, because they had these beings, because they had to, their life was in danger. And the answer they were given is step back, go inwards, express unconditional love. And the way Treb expressed, I remember that story, how he was telling that, and I was like, wow, that's what we can be doing here a lot too. It's like, I think we have been doing that as individuals, and that's why we haven't had this nuclear holocaust or these things, is a lot of us have realized, that's not the way to go, of trying to protect yourself and build more and more weapons, because all these other races they've done had similar experiences, and the ones that made it looks like are the ones that went inwards and really stopped that power game, because that leads nowhere.
We can wrap up soon, because I want people to be excited about seeing you, and you might probably have things to do, but can you just talk a little bit about, and thanks, Justin, for that. I appreciate that. And you were shaking. Oh, let's just finish that thought. You were shaking your head when Justin was speaking. What were you agreeing to there?
Yeah, well, first of all, my wife came to the door to let you know that she's emailed you the pictures of Trev and Ardif too, so that if you needed them, you could have.
Oh, great.
Secondly, Treb's race, when they were attacked, the Nihal had always been a guiding force in their life. They're the ones who created them genetically. So they let them have their third density experience towards the end, then came to greet them and co-connect with them, because at that point, they were already at the end of their fourth density journey, or at the beginning of their fifth. So higher dimensional beings, when they interact, they come to you through either telepathic, or they drop their bodies down into a lower dimension through their own internal technology of manifesting outwardly a body to project their consciousness into. Whatever the means is, some use inner technology, some use outer. But the Nihal did. They came to Treb's race. They interacted with them when they were attacked, and I think almost a third or a fourth of their population was killed in that attack. So at that level, they're just trying to start manifesting, and they have that energy there. It was very, very deep trauma for their race to get over. And it's almost all the way cleared at this point, just like anything that happens where the devastation of souls and bodies meet. It was an interesting lesson for them. They'd always been peaceful and always been aware and always meditated, but they had to learn the depth of it. And that's the part Justin was covering beautifully. The internal technology had to be activated too. And that's the meditation, the growing of consciousness, the integration of more of your higher self into your body, so that you can use the telepathy and the conscious, all those parts of the evolution.
That's what's happening to us right now as a planetary race. Exactly that moment of transformation we're in. How do we use consciousness in a different way to manifest? I just interviewed this guy talking about the age of the sixth sun, which is an internal sort of presence, as opposed to this daylight sun. We're having a nighttime sun where the information is inward. And this is a Toltec prophecy. And actually, I'm hosting a big whole prophecy show this Thursday. And so people can see about that on at the Open Center. But just to wrap up here, can you talk a little bit about what you might be sharing at the walk-in conference? And if you're a channel, why do you feel like, how come you're at a walk-in conference?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I'm not a walk-in that I know of. I very highly doubt it, even though I made some big changes. RDIF is one of the most, like I said, technical when it comes to consciousness, phenomenon, physical, the conscious reasons behind it. What he brought to the book that Sheila did, and also Miguel, he brought an understanding of the mechanics behind it. And there's not many channelers that I've met who have guides that come through in such technical ways when it comes to how consciousness interacts with physicality. So he brings a light and understanding of the mechanics behind it, the reasons why, the types of souls who choose it, the interactivity between the body, the soul, and the soul that's entering and leaving, why they did that, the journey behind it, and everything. I think he'll cover a lot of that information.
Beautiful. So you're going to you go into trance on camera, you go off camera, and then go and speak. How will you do it?
Yeah, my neutralizing is always off camera, but my connection to RDIF is always on camera. So everyone will be able to hear the oming and the connection process. And then once RDIF gets there, he'll chat.
Great. No, I'm very excited you're part of this. I hope you're part of some of the things Justin and I are doing. And I want to see your work get out there, because your story is so intense, that going through that drug addiction and then coming back out, like you've bridged the realms of consciousness, and most people just stay in this little zone, and so did that help you channel going what Bashar says to as dense as you can get here? And I mean, most people are, but how did that help your channeling?
Yeah, I don't think I ever would have found interest in channeling. Like if 2 years before I met Treb, or even 6 months before I met Treb, if you would have shown me clips of channelers channeling, I would have laughed and said, that's silly, that's dumb. For me, if I didn't go to the maximum disconnection, I couldn't have found the way to connect best. And I think that was exactly it for me. In drugs, people say when you take drugs and you're in addiction, at the height of addiction, you lose your soul. Well, that's not true. Your soul's always there. You just disconnect from your higher self completely. You have no access to it, nor do you desire access. When I came out of that, that's when I found a re-sparking of that connection, which made me hungry for it. Plus, having addictive personality made me chase the meditation and chase how far can I go with this thing? All of that was important for my journey.
Beautiful. Do you give private sessions too?
Yeah. etwhisper.com. You can go there. We do sessions. I teach people how to channel who are interested in channeling, because anybody can channel if you learn how. And I do private one-on-one sessions. We do Patreon twice a month. We do a lot of stuff. All of it's at the website.
Great. Maybe we'll do another interview where you can actually channel and all that. And, I just had an idea, Justin. Why don't we do like a channel forum where people teach how to channel, like at 3, and because
what if you actually got people in the audience to start channeling? That would be awesome.
Yeah. It's channeling in the way I've taught it before is it's a process. My first 2 classes are on my YouTube site. So if you put in ET Whisper channeling class 1 or channeling class 2, this shows you if you'll be interested in it. But all it is learning how to get resistance out of your way. And it can be that simple. I've had people who channeled quickly after their first class. I've had people who've worked with me for 3 years and can't channel now, but are better connected to their higher self and their intuition than they were before. So it's different for everybody. You know,
Right.
everyone has their own levels of resistance and lacks of resistance.
Yeah,
So
and it's like everyone can play the piano, but not everyone can play it well, you know? So
true.
some people are naturally gifted for certain phenomena and events and activities, and other aren't. Well, thanks for being here today. I just wanted to answer one question. Says on the chat here, they're so interested in walk-ins, and I guess I would define a walk-in as someone, and Sheila does it great, someone who has left their body in a sense, and another higher being has walked in. So it's not like taking over. There was an agreement about one soul leaving and another soul entering, and in a way you were probably close to that, right? And going but for some reason, why do you think your soul hung on? Because you wanted to have that experience, I suppose.
Yeah, I always had an interest in finding more and digging deeper with how our world works, how the universe works. All those things were important to me from the time I was as young as I could remember until later. Like in my science class, I always did really great. I always asked questions that teachers couldn't answer. So these types of things were natural inclinations for me. And this was a way to find, excuse me, to find more information out about that in a way that I couldn't ever get it in schools and classes and TV programs. So I think for me, that was probably part of the reason. Hanging in there was something, you know, I think that in my own personal opinion, I was meant to be a channeler.
Right.
And that's why I do it. And I think deep in myself, high in myself and the higher self, I knew that that was there. I just had to find a way to get to it. I took, like a Capricorn always does, I took the hardest route there.
Right. Well, it's great that you did it, because you know, you not only helped yourself, you're helping everyone who hears these higher words of knowledge, and that's what's so beautiful about channeling. Real channels are bringing through a depth of soul quality that we all can learn from. So thank you, Rob.
Yes,
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Justin. You guys
Yeah,
have been
pleasure to
amazing.
do
It's
this.
great to connect with you.
We'll see you this weekend. And Justin and I are going to do some more forums on channeling. Where can people find your work, Justin? And the
yeah. So the channel perspective is the podcast I do, and the channel panel and is the Facebook site. Probably would change it to the channel panel forum. We're looking about, because obviously Rob has his own channel panel. A lot of synchronicity going here, but yeah, we had that in December, our first runabout, and it was a wonderful experience for everybody who participated.
Yeah,
So much cool information came through.
It's great. It's a real evolution when that higher energy comes through. Everyone can feel it and vibe
It's very
to
palpable.
it. And the walk-in panel, the walk-in, it's not a panel, but the walk-in conference, I'll put that up again. Do you see that on your screen there?
Yep.
All right. This is coming this Friday, January 8th, 9th, and 10th. You can find that on portaltoascension.org. Go to the walk-in panel. These are some of our amazing speakers this weekend, including Rob. Your website, Rob, is ET Whisperer.
Yeah, etwhisper.com and thechannelpanel.com and my Facebook, or I've got tons of Facebook stuff, so you can always check there too. But YouTube is the ET Whisper Rob Gauthier. Yeah.
Right. And I'm Alan Steinfeld for New Realities, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing more. Justin and Rob, hopefully. I really love the genuine quality of your sharing, because it's you don't hide anything. You let it all out, and that grounds it in the human dimension. So thank you. Any final words for you, Justin? Anything?
No, this is it's an honor, because Rob has been a teacher on through his YouTube videos. I've learned a lot that helped me deal with a lot of the changing energies that are going on in our reality, the ascension process, and these perspectives from other races that have been through the same thing is definitely helped me kind of, you know, just take it easy and see that we're going to get through this. I mean, others have done it. And it's yeah, I'm very appreciative, Rob.
Yeah, thanks again. If people want to find me,
Thank you,
go to
guys.
my
No
YouTube
worries.
channel. Thank you. And Rob, the ET Whisperer is your YouTube channel as well?
Yeah.
Okay, and register if you can for this amazing 3-day conference, 24 hours. We're going to do 3 days in a row, not 3 days, 24 hours, but total 24 hours. Go to portaltoascension.org, look for the walk-in conference, sign up, and tell us what your experience here. Thank you, everyone talking online. I'm just going to end the meeting, and I'll talk to you soon. Both of you, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take it
It's
easy,
a
guys.
pleasure.
For new realities. Okay.